This video will give you instruction on how to graph piecewise functions in your TI-84 calculator. First, I've got two different piecewise functions. We're going to concentrate on the very first one to begin. It's simpler. I'm going to go to y equals. At y equals, I have to put in both pieces of that function. So on y1, I'm going to put in 2x minus 5. Now if I just went ahead and hit graph, I'm going to have that full line of 2x minus 5. However, the piecewise function tells me that this piece is only over the domain for when x is less than or equal to 1. So back on y equals, I'm going to cursor to the end of the function 2x minus 5. And the calculator requires you to use a syntax of divided by. It is not dividing anything. It's used as a slash to signify to the calculator that that's the end of my function. Now I'm going to tell it the domain for that piece of that function. To do that, I'm going to use parentheses, x, then I have to get less than or equal to, and define less than or equal to, it's test, which is the second function over top of the math key. So click second and test. It's going to bring up my inequality. In this case, I want less than or equal to, so less than or equal to is number 6. So I'll choose 6. And in this case, x is less than or equal to 1, and I'm going to close my parenthesis. A quick look at the graph will show that now it will graph that line, but it stops at the interval from 0 to positive 1. Going back to y equals, I cursor down to y2. I'm going to put in the second piece of my function. In this case, negative 1/2 x plus 3. And again, if I just hit graph, it would give me the entire line. However, this piecewise function indicates this piece of the function is only for the domain where x is greater than 0. So I'm going to use my syntax of my calculator of divided by, which is really a slash for syntax, indicating the end of that piece of the function. Put in a parenthesis, type in x, and I have to again get to my inequality signs, which is accessed through second test. In this case, greater than happens to be number 3 option, so I'll hit 3, and greater than 0. Oops, that should say greater than 1. I can't have a function if I have two inputs for one input, two outputs for one input. So I'm going to close that parenthesis. And now when I hit graph, I'll see the very two distinct pieces of that function. Let's go and correct that. Going back to your calculator, let's go now to y equals, and I'm going to clear those two pieces of that function because I want to do this more complicated function. And the reason it's a little more complicated is the center part. The center part, which is a 3-part inequality. That 3-part inequality cannot be understood by your calculator. So you're going to rewrite that 3-part inequality, and you're going to set that up as an and or an intersection of inequality. You will put it in your calculator as negative 2 is less than x and x is less than or equal to 3. So going back to our calculator, in y1, we're going to put the first piece of that particular piecewise function, negative 3 force x. plus 1. Again, I'm going to use my divide by for a slash to tell the calculator that's the end of that piece of the function. I'm now going to restrict the domain of that piece by putting parenthesis x less than or equal to, so I have to use second test menu, less than or equal to happens to be number 6, negative 2, and close my parenthesis. Cursor down to y2, I'm ready to put in my second piece of my function. This is going to be obviously a horizontal line at negative 3, so I'll put negative 3 divided by, that's the end of my function. Now I'm going to tell it the domain of the function, and I have to put in this 3-part with and or intersection. So I'm going to put parenthesis, negative 2, less than, which has to be second test menu, less than is number 5, x, and you just can't type in the word and. You have to go to your second test menu again, and in this case where it says test are your inequality signs, but if you cursor over to the right using the cursor key, you'll cursor over to logic, and this is Boolean math, and I'm looking for number 1, and. Now I'm going to continue with x is less than or equal to 3, so second test, less than or equal to happens to be number 6. Then I want it to be less than or equal to number 3. So I'm going to close now my parenthesis. I'm going to cursor down to y3 to put in the third piece of this piecewise function. X squared minus 1 divided by for my slash, and I'm going to use my parenthesis, x second test, in this case greater than 3, so I'm going to choose greater than 3, close my parenthesis. Now I'm ready to see my graph, and I'll see one piece, then I'll see that horizontal line, and I can just barely see the function up here. So if I wanted to see it a little more, I could go to my window, and my y max could be increased to say 20, and I'll hit my graph. I'll see the 3 distinct pieces of that graph. That's how you would enter and graph a piecewise function.